What we'll need to understand before we start with the physics is acceleration, which is the speed at which velocity changes over a given amount of time. Velocity, which is the speed at which an object moves in any given direction and can change due to acceleration. The force of gravity, which is the force at which the planet pulls down the specific object due to its mass. The mass, which is the apparent weight of an object. Gravity, which is negative 9.8 meters per second squared. And force normal, which is an force that any object exerts to cancel out Fg so it doesn't go through the earth. What we'll need to understand continued will be the F net, which is the acceleration force / deceleration force, the force of friction, momentum, which is equal to the mass times velocity, and momentum before will equal the momentum after. In other words, the mass times the velocity of the collision beforehand will equal to the mass times the velocity of the collision afterwards. And since the equation is a triangle, we must take the respective components and divide it by their respective masses. What we also need to remember is the coefficient of friction, because since we know that the car was 0.77 mu and the truck has 70% of the cars, we can solve for the trucks leaving as the mu value of 0.45. As a driver approaches a red light, it must come to a complete stop, and only whenever it believes it is safe to do so, it's allowed to continue through the intersection. On the other hand, when a driver encounters a flashing yellow, it is allowed to enter the intersection at a cautious speed, and should only yield to pedestrians if there are pedestrians or someone else has the right of way. That means that the driver of the car must come to a complete stop for the truck driver to be at fault in this incident. And the car, if it was at fault, it has to have ran the red light, putting itself into harm's way as they do not proceed whenever it is safe to do so. The only factor that we know for sure is the color of the lights. The rest of the claims have yet to be proven. The truck driver claimed to have slowed down to 6.7 meters per second by the time of the impact, while the car has claimed to have been at a full stop at the flashing red light, then continued. We also know that the car was 13 meters into the intersection where the collision occurred, and the car can only accelerate at 3 meters per second squared. Here is a triangle. To prove or solve that the collision did not occur as how the drivers stated, we must solve the equation using physics to find out who is at fault. The weight of the truck is 69,700 newtons, or times by gravity to end up getting the weight in kilograms, which is 7,112.2 kilograms. The weight of the car is known to be 13,600 newtons, or times by gravity to end up getting the weight in kilograms, which is 1,387.8 kilograms. With the numbers that were given by the drivers, this result never could have happened, because the truck ended up 11 meters away from the collision point, and the car ended up 8.2 meters away from the collision point, with the truck at an angle of 7 degrees and the car at an angle of 33 degrees. Another given is the coefficient of friction of the car, which is mu equals 0.77. The truck has 70% of the car's mu as its own, so the truck's mu is equal to 0.54 mu. We can solve for acceleration by taking the F net, which is equal to the mass times acceleration, which also, as a result, we know that F net is equal to the force of friction. So we take ma, which is equal to mu Fn, and then realize that since Fn is equal to Fg, we make that as ma is equal to u mu Fg, which is also equal to just mu mass times gravity divided by the mass, which will leave us as only having acceleration is equal to mu of gravity, and we then solve for each of the equations to give us the acceleration for both respectively. We now must solve the speed needed in each of the x and y direction to find out each initial speed prior to collision. Since we know that the cars and the truck's velocities at each respective angle, we can now solve the other sides of the triangle by taking our known side weight and known velocity to find out what the momentum is of each product. With momentum prime solve, we can find the x and y by taking the prime value and multiplying it by the sin and cos of each of the prime's momentum. So we'll take the car's prime and times it by 33 sin and cos to give us the y and x direction of the car, and we'll do the same with the truck. Times it by the sin and cos of 7, which is equal also to the x and y speed of which the truck was traveling. Then we will take each sides, which we know the truck was traveling in the x direction and the car was traveling in the y direction. So we put the trucks and cars x direction together and the cars and trucks y direction together, and divide it by the mass of each of the vehicles in the respective direction, which will give us the speed at which the y direction was traveling and the x direction was traveling, because momentum is conserved. Since the cars lied and ultimately broken the law by running a red, and the truck was only traveling for yellow at a slower speed, the car would be penalized as a result. Since we know that the collision occurred 13 meters in the intersection, and that car can only accelerate at 3 meters a second, we can solve that since its velocity final should have been 12.8, the numbers don't actually work out to prove it as being 12.8. It shows that the car's final velocity, if it did indeed stop, would have only been at 8.83 meters a second. Since we know that, that means that the car lied and committed an even more serious offense of running a red light, resulting in a car crash that could have been proven as it reached, or as it could have not have reached 12.8 meters in 13 meters. The truck driver also lied. He was traveling at 12.5 meters a second instead of 6.7. He did not slow down to his implied speed, but did not break the law with his light. So the car is at fault. The car is at fault and a massive liar, and also scum of the earth, by putting other lives at jeopardy. Stoplights are put in place so you stop. Not doing so can put your life or others at danger. Just because you wanted to save 10 to 15 seconds instead of driving like a responsible person does not make it acceptable. The truck driver still lied, but since he had the right of way, he could have possibly been in a panic state, or he could have possibly been trying to slow down, but his foot never quite hit the brake because he was shocked, as the car did not stop at the light and a crash occurred. Since the speed limit was not stated, we can assume that the truck driver was driving below the speed limit at a more cautious speed. And since the car driver was going faster than the truck driver, the car is still at fault as it ran a red light, and the truck driver was just trying to cautiously go through it whenever someone ran a red and ended up resulting in a crash.